I have the pleasure to welcome Christophe Fichet from Fasken Martineau, Canadian lawyer, cabinet, and Christophe.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Floor is yours. So,
Why lawyer?
yeah.
What for?
What for?
And you know, the lawyers are more comfortable in a court with judge than in such events, and it's such a great
Venue,
space and value. But I remember also the first time we met together in Barcelona during the Mobile World Congress, and this was exactly the same question you asked me.
Yeah.
Why a lawyer? What is your vision about the technologies, the innovation, and how a lawyer can handle these matters, you know, to protect innovation, to make it possible? And I think this is typically what is our duty today, because I think that laws and regulation, far from being very abstractive and far from the real issues of the industry, of the business, are more and more involved, and we have to be present in such events to meet the people, not only our clients, but to know more about what are the state of the technologies, to be perfectly able thereafter to handle these matters and to translate it in a language which be feasible and on a long-term basis and on a secured basis. My background is also specific because I started 10 years ago, and I started in the telecom, media, and technology sector at the time of liberalization of telecommunication in France. So through this experience, I'll also have a specific knowledge about infrastructures, about content, about IT, and about data privacy issues, as you mentioned. And especially through these data protection issues, I jumped to the healthcare sector. I was requested by a partner of mine at that time who said to me, do you know something about data privacy issue? Because I have a client of mine which is a big pharmaceutical company, and there are some concerns about implementing clinical trials, compliance issues, and there are some data which are considered as sensitive data. Are you aware of that? And say yes. And progressively, I jumped into this sector, and I discovered that this sector was also very connected to the sector I know from the IT, and finally that there are some of convergence between, not only between, because it's only technological, but also because as a matter of fact, and from a legal standpoint, you have quite the same issues: intellectual property, protection of innovation, IT issues, and as I mentioned, privacy issues. Sorry.
Privacy, yeah.
And now my work also is to advise both actors from the telecoms. We know that there is also an important market to address and to meet the demands from the new actors, from the medical sectors, who wants also, reversely, to address new people. And these people can be their consumer, but also can be patient. So there is now a new key issue, which is what is a patient? And if because there is a dematerialization even of the relationship between the patient and the medical sector and the doctors, is it still really a patient, an e-patient, a mobile patient? Because now you have a lot of application on your smartphones. So I think that even though from a legal standpoint there are remedies, there are tools that can be adapted from intellectual property, etc. I think that we have, nevertheless, to retain two major issues at that point: the regulatory aspects and the data privacy issues. With respect to healthcare, it's because one of the major duties of the states, of government, of public authorities, is to provide safety of drugs, safety of system, and reliability and protection of patients. So. And far from this new consideration, what we can also observe is that from what we call in France, for example, the Code de la Santé Publique, the French public code, or other regulation, including on the EU level, there are new regulation, directives, rules, etc., that have already integrated this new dimension. But we have to be very careful, especially when you come from the technological or for the telecoms, from them, and you do not know this area. Regulatory aspect shall be taken into account. And the second topics, as I mentioned, is the privacy issues. And you know, I think, and we could probably discuss about this case, but there is a big gap between the US or gap or not, we could discuss thereafter, but gap between the US and the EU system.
Yeah.
And now there is an harmonized regulation within the 27 member states of the European Union. But now we work on the globalized, on the mondialization, the globalized world. So when I collect data, when I process the data, sometimes I could transfer it to my mother company, for example. But this is not usual data. This is not. This is very particle data, and because it's also even for me, when I am not lawyer, when I go to the internet and when I put some elements about my life, about my health, I want to have some protection. And I think will be my last word. I think that it is a very key issue because it's also part of the success of the innovation. We have to be very careful to provide a reliable system which also provide reliability of hosting, of processing of this personal data. Otherwise, people will not be confident, will not trust in this new innovation technology, and I'm not sure that will be successful. But again, this is just a lawyer perspective and point of view.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
No, you're right. You're right. Actually, it's privacy, reliability, but it's also communication between the different states because we see that laws are actually different from one country to another. Yeah. And so, what about facilitating this topic with me?
Okay, thank you.
And you know what? I had the idea to, as we were addressing data and all these aspects of protecting and making sure that all your private, which is really private data actually, what you're monitored for, or all the different exams you go through with the politicians, I thought, well, what is one of the largest organization in the world that is managing health data? And I found IMS Health. And I've got the pleasure to welcome here on stage